World of RPGs, Episode 26, Kazakhstan. Welcome to the World of RPGs, a podcast in which we travel around the globe and learn about the local role-playing game scenes. I'm your host, Mo Bots, and in Episode 26, we're going to Kazakhstan. And today I'm also joined by another co-host. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Matthew Hickey. I'm a graduate student at the University of Pittsburgh in the U.S., studying international development. I got to know the World of RPGs podcast through their really incredible coverage of a lot of countries. And I thought that I had something to contribute, so I decided to reach out to Moritz, and he's been a wonderful host.
So you're from the US. Why are we talking with each other when this is a Kazakhstan episode?
I'm from the United States, but I spent time in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and got familiar with their role-playing game scene and got to chatting with the people from this country. Because I can speak Russian, I was able to get to know them, play some games with them, and serve as a bridge between Moritz and some of the local designers and creators.
Okay, we'll talk more about that in a second. Also, I was wondering about the Russian. But before we go into that, can you maybe also tell us how you got into role-playing games?
So I'm a second-generation dungeon master. My father taught me when I was 8, back in the early 2000s. I've been doing it ever since then, and I've played in 4 languages on 3 continents and with people from 21 different countries since then.
That's amazing. I think I've played in 4 countries, but only in 2 languages. Speaking of the different countries and languages, let's go to Kazakhstan. And you said you played in Russian there, but if I look at the country, so first, this might be a place that not many people know, or you've heard the name but can't really place it on a map. So Kazakhstan is in Central Asia, bordering Russia, China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. So you hear all these stan countries. That's basically just Persian for country. And it's landlocked, so it doesn't have connection to an ocean. Well, it has the Caspian Sea, but that's kind of I don't know how you call it. Have you been to the Caspian Sea?
Unfortunately, no, only to Almaty, which is in the south of Kazakhstan.
That's the biggest city. And it is the former Soviet Union, and that's why many people there still speak Russian. So there's also a large Russian minority. But the main ethnic group, and the one the country is named after, is the Kazakh, and they also have their own language. So in the teaser for this episode, that was actually the Kazakh language, which is a Turkic language. But me living in Turkey, it's not really close to it. I mean, I could understand 1 sentence of that recording, I think. So how's your Kazakh?
I speak only a very small amount of Kyrgyz that I learned when I was in Bishkek. Unfortunately, I speak no Kazakh.
I think it's one of the Turkic languages still written with a Cyrillic alphabet, so like Russian.
They recently swapped to Latin alphabet.
Oh, they did. Oh, then Wikipedia must be updated. I usually get this info from Wikipedia if I don't really know a country well. So we usually talk about language because, of course, it's important to know what gaming material they have. And you'll later see that in the interviews that they took a lot of stuff from Russia or read Russian media on role-playing games because that's like the second big language in the country. And it was also when you contacted people that you fell back to Russian a lot, I think, wasn't it?
Yes. So in Kazakhstan, the primary language that role-playing games are played in is Russian. This is due to the availability of translated products, the widespread speaking of the language, and the very active participation of Russians and ethnic Russians within the gaming space. There are very limited Kazakh language materials, and most people are exposed either through Russian podcasts like Chicken Curry or English podcasts like Critical Role or Dimension 20.
And how did you reach out to people? Was that like Facebook groups, which is my main method of finding people, or what do people use in Kazakhstan?
So to reach out to people in Kazakhstan, I primarily reached out by joining Telegram servers or following them on Instagram. I first got into this space by visiting a big game zone in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan in person. It's one of the first role-playing and board game clubs in Kyrgyzstan. I visited, donated some books, and they recommended which telegrams I should join in Astana and Almaty. And from there, I was connected to various other telegram channels throughout the region.
So Astana and Almaty are the 2 biggest cities in Kazakhstan?
Yes. Almaty is a big hub for comic cons and role-playing games.
So the country has a population of 20 million, roughly, which I was surprised because it's such a large country, which has this history of nomads. So I thought it would be like Canada and mostly empty. And I mean, I guess for the size of Kazakhstan, it's one of the biggest countries in the world. 20 million is not much. But if we compare it to our last episode, which was Malta, that had 500,000 people, 20 million is still quite large, in my opinion.
Yeah, Kazakhstan is a very populous country, concentrated a lot in smaller regions. And it's funny you mentioned their nomadic history because the term Kazakh actually comes from a word meaning free, independent, or wanderer. There's a lot of pride in their nomadic heritage, especially in their role playing games.
Another thing that can influence role-playing games is, of course, religion. So if we come to things like magic in the game or ideas of the supernatural. On the other hand, also on the role-playing scene, for example, in the US, we have this history of the satanic panic. We also had that in some European countries. And I think in the Brazil episode, there was also mention of such a case. If I look at Wikipedia, it says predominantly Sunni Muslim, but having been under communist rule for a long time, for many decades, I would assume, like in Central Europe, it might not be that religious. That's just my assumption.
It's a complicated question. Kazakhstan is primarily Sunni Muslim of the Hanafi school of jurisprudence, with large Orthodox Christian minorities. There have been historically parallels to the Satanic Panic with role playing games, with some older generations viewing it as, in some ways, satanic.
I myself also want to visit Kazakhstan, and I had planned it for last year, but then there were some issues with the research project and funding, etc. So we had planned to visit Almaty with some colleagues, and it didn't work out. So I've never visited it, but the Turkic-speaking Central Asian countries are definitely on my travel bucket list, on the top of it. So the first talk will be with a gamer and organizer from the capital, Astana.
Hi, I'm Irlan from Astana, Kazakhstan. In 2023, I opened my own board game club, and that's where I started running role-playing games too. Mostly using my table with a TV, like a virtual tabletop. It's been a great way to bring people together and introduce new players to the hobby. Recently, I've fully transferred the club to trusted management, so now I can focus more on the game mastering and community development.
And how did you get into role-playing games?
It's all started with Baldur's Gate 1. I played it back in the late 90s, and I just blew my mind. That kind of story and freedom was amazing. Then my friend brought me an advanced Dungeons and Dragons core book from the USA, and that changed everything. That I finally got what a real tabletop role-playing games was, not just a computer game, but a world you build together with your friends. I tried running my first games for my classmates, and when Baldur's Gate 2 came out, that was the point of no return. It was all in all D&D after that.
And have you played other games apart from D&D?
Right now, I mostly run games instead of playing. I'm usually the dungeon master or game master. My absolute favorite is Call of Cthulhu, but I also run Lost of Dungeons and Dragons, of course. From time to time, I try some less known systems just for fun. But Call of Cthulhu and D&D, they are my go-tos. When it comes to settings, I've always loved anything inspired by Lovecraft. I use different versions of his universe, like the Chaosium and FFG, and I like to mix elements from both when creating my campaigns, letting characters move between different interpretations of the same universe.
And speaking of universe, if you play Call of Cthulhu, do you set it in Kazakhstan or in New England or somewhere else?
Of course, a lot of scenes will be in Arkham. Arkham placed in USA, but we have two campaigns around all world, and some scenes will be in the 80s in USSR, in Moscow. We have two timelines. One timeline will be in the 30s, and one timeline have been in the 80s. So investigators helps themselves in the future.
You mentioned that you founded a game store back in 2023 and have since transferred it over to new management so you can focus on running the games.
How would you describe kind of the environment that you play in? Is it more of a club environment? Is it more of a store environment? What kind of props do you use?
So we're trying to bring a lot of stuff in our games. I like to make a scene with a lot of miniatures, with a lot of terrain. So we are bringing it from another communities. Because also I am really involved in the local Warhammer community. So miniatures and terrain are never an issue. So we got plenty of that around it. And we try and prepare scenes with a lot of features, a lot of stuff, trying to raise up our level of gaming.
So you used to run a game store. I noticed in Almaty, the stores, they do not make as much money selling books, but they do make a lot of money selling tickets for games with prices that are actually sometimes higher than they are in the United States. So I was just curious how much of owning a store is selling books versus hosting games for tickets.
Of course, hosting of games brings more money, more cash. As I know, there is a lot of difference between prices for games in several countries because we have a lot of experienced clubs here in Almaty. There is a two large club that put high price for the gaming. So Astana trying to take this level. We're trying to release our game masters for the best experience for the players and trying to raise our prices because for the more experience and for better game masters.
So I come from a country where paying for game masters is not accepted much. In Germany, people don't really do that. So I don't really know how it works. How do you find these game masters? Like, how do you know who's a good game master before they run a session?
So we are working with the community. We are guest visiting to the games to look for level of masters and recruit them for commercial gamings. Also, I give to the good hands my club and we are developing our communities. We starts event called Master A, where our game masters takes a challenge to make a little one-shot sessions with the systems that they not know. They don't know what systems, their roles for random systems and trying to make one shot for these systems. There is 100 names of systems. Not popular, not Call of Cthulhu, not D&D, not Vampire Masquerades. Tabletop role-playing games in Kazakhstan have been growing really fast, especially in the club scene. I've been working on building a wider community, so going beyond just my own club and connecting players across the country. So right now in our group we have at least 4 active clubs in Astana city and around 2000 game masters. In the bigger cities like Astana and Almaty, there are usually at least one club. Actually, both cities there are about 4, and some of them are quite large with the really active communities in these clubs.
And when you play, so you said it's sometimes set in the USSR. So do you play in the Kazakh language or in Russian?
So I'm mostly run games in Russian language because it's my first language and it's just easier to express the right mood and details that way. In Kazakhstan, we divide to the regions. So north regions using Russian language more often than the south, east, and west regions.
I've also heard a lot about the different styles of play, especially in Kazakhstan. People prefer different things. How would you describe your personal style of play, the play of your community, and are there any new or emerging trends or fashions?
As you can understand, I was started to mastering game in 1999 when I took Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book. So I'm the old school master. We are like to more preparing for the dungeon crawling, more preparing for the possibility of relationships between NPCs, between players. So I have a lot of notebook papers with the notes about possible variants of development of scenes of actions.
You mentioned how you were very much an old school dungeon master, influenced by like original Dungeons and Dragons. But there's also lots of new school gamers in Kazakhstan who started playing after Critical Role. In your community, are there many old school or new school gamers, in your opinion?
Development of community stays on most popular channels in internet, like a Critical Role, but a lot of people come from Russian spoken community. Chicken Curry Dungeon. A lot of people come after watching Chicken Curry Dungeons, where is a lot of famous comedian artists playing in some kind of version of D&D. They have more simple rules, but there is a lot of role playing because there is a professional artist there. So Critical Role take top 2 to the most watched videos.
So are there, like in Astana or Almaty, are there game shops there where you can buy physical role-playing games?
So we do have some hobby stores that sell books, dice, and other tabletop stuff, but they are pretty small. Most of the time I order things from abroad, usually from United Kingdom or the USA, eBay, Amazon, and something else. When I run games, as I told, I really like using miniatures and terrain to make everything more immersive. So I have a 3D printer and sometimes have orders extra pieces in local shops.
Okay, so you would use English language books and not Russian material for running games.
A lot of books translated to the Russian language, but there is most popular systems like D&D, like Call of Cthulhu, but a lot of systems don't have translation on the Russian language, so we're trying to use English core books.
Do you have local conventions, maybe one day or weekend, where people meet and play?
So if we talk about large events, conventions are quite active here in Kazakhstan, especially as a part of larger geek and pop culture festivals where come cosplayers, fans, role players. For example, we have Comic-Con Astana is the largest annual event with international guests from Hollywood, a lot of cosplay contests and tons of fun activities. So our local RPG communities often take a part in those events. We set up small tables, run demo sessions, and talk to new players.
So the people going to these conventions would be both ethnic Kazakhs and ethnic Russians and other people? Or is it like mostly Kazakhs going?
People from neighboring countries onward came from Kazakhstan, came from Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. It's an annual event. Local conventions will be in Almaty, will be in Kostanay, will be in Aktobe, ones from the largest cities from Kazakhstan where they preparing local events. So we're trying to visit it, trying to communicate with the other communities from the other cities.
On that, I've heard quite a lot that Vampire the Masquerade is very popular in Kazakhstan, even Mage the Ascension, whereas in America this was a role-playing game that is still popular but was mostly played in the past decades. Compared to D&D, how popular are other systems like Vampire the Masquerade?
In Kazakhstan, D&D is most popular. It takes maybe 95% for all running sessions in Kazakhstan. Masquerades maybe takes 1-2 groups that I know. Maybe there is another groups who runs campaigns, but I know only 1-2 groups that playing campaign in our clubs.
Enter here from the country's largest city. Here are two organizers from Almaty.
I'm Anela. I'm a marketing manager of our Dice Club. We played with my director, so he's my big brother. So we played at home, and after that, we took a room for players, and it was a bigger and bigger.
And which game was that you started with?
We started some tabletop games. So after that, we tried Dungeons and Dragons. It's the most popular in our country.
So did you have the English version of it or some translation?
We played in Russian most of the time.
Are you aware of any groups that play in the Kazakh language?
We have some, but not very much. It's 1-2 group in a year. So most of our games are in Russian.
There's suddenly a second voice. You also have to introduce yourself before everybody is confused. So who are you and how did you start?
Sorry, my name is Arslan, and I am founder of the Dice Club. Anela is my marketing manager. My wife and I are really big board game enthusiasts, and we have played a wide variety of games over the years. At some point, I was invited to try Dungeons and Dragons, and that's how I got into tabletop role-play gaming. I started the club with just one room, then it expanded to 5, and now we have 8 rooms in our club. At the moment, besides tabletop RPGs, we most often play Magic the Gathering, and we regularly play other board games and have already become our favorites.
When did you start? Which year?
In 2023.
Okay, so 2 years ago.
Yes, in 2026 it will be 3 years, in January.
So apart from Dungeons and Dragons, what other kinds of games do you play in the club?
Mostly it's Dungeons and Dragons and Vampire Masquerade and Cyberpunk Red. They are most popular in our club.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you play games like Vampire or Cyberpunk, do you play them in Almaty? So is it Vampires in Kazakhstan or is it in some other location?
No, it's mostly in other countries.
Most of our games run abroad, in USA, in Night City. Yes, Vampires the Masquerade have their own city, Night City, so. But some of another systems, like JoJo's Adventures, we can run in Almaty. Sometimes we had that experience. Our players played like their characters are in Almaty.
So have you included any local things from Almaty into the games? Like maybe some monster from folklore?
If we do that, it's not that often to say. We usually don't do this.
So how do people find out about your club? Is it well known among gamers, or how do people in Kazakhstan find out about games?
I think it's casual people. We are open for all kind of people. We are using our Instagram for marketing. For different types, we use different types of marketing. We encourage casual people to try. Just try one time and then you can decide, do you like it or don't you like it? But you should try just one time. Don't hear, don't look, just come to us and try. And then you can decide it's your hobby or not your hobby.
So I've noticed Vampire the Masquerade is very popular in Kazakhstan. And I've played some set in Pittsburgh, actually, with people in Kazakhstan. I was curious, why do you think Vampire the Masquerade is so popular in Kazakhstan compared to other countries?
I think we have a couple of enthusiasts that really like this system. And they are playing this system about 10 or 15 years before I came in this hobby. And I think that enthusiasts encourage another people to try and play. D&D is about 95% of our games. Vampires the Masquerade, about half of 1%. So in our club, it's not very popular system. I know a couple of people who are very like Vampires the Masquerade.
And so these enthusiasts, where would they get the books?
From Amazon and international shipping in English. And we have a couple Russian books.
Also in Kazakhstan, there are many game clubs, but not many game stores. Like in Almaty and Astana, there are both game clubs, but I could not find many game stores where you could buy books.
We don't have products on Russian language or Kazakh English. Only English. Not all of our people know English or interested in English. In our club, we are translating all the materials to Russian from English and Russian games or Kazakh games. But casual people can do this. They can't take products on Russian language because of, we know, all 2022. So I think that's the reason. We can't get the product on Russian language. We don't have licenses. We can't go official stores, official game spaces. It's all on our enthusiasts' shoulders. I just put money in this and say, I won't develop this hobby in my country. And now it's about 100 games per week in my club. Average players is about 5.5. So it's 400 games per month. It's not unique players, but still players. It's very popular now. It wasn't popular 3 years ago, and now it's popular. But other people can't do this because of language issues and license issues.
Yes, it's an impressive amount of games. My local gaming club in a city of 20 million
We have 2 million in Almaty.
has 8 sessions a month with 5 players. So it's quite impressive what you're doing. So are you writing your own adventures for D&D?
Yes, of course. Our game masters always write their own adventures. They're using official models and running their own models.
Are you planning to maybe publish these modules, make them available?
Yes, we have plans to make the platform where we will upload our self-made models for different systems. We have this in our plans for about 6 months.
So these modules, do any of them cover like Kazakh culture? Like even if it's a fantasy thing, are there some cultural elements?
It's still a casual fantasy, but sometimes our game masters can add some cultural particular qualities.
Can you give an example?
Some of our Vampire the Masquerade games run in USSR locations. It was more popular than the regular one, but that was only experiment. There's not much demand. Tabletop RPGs is something new for Kazakhstan. It's only rising. It's just doing their first steps. So I think we need to play some regular models, casual fantasy worlds, and then we will promote our cultural oriented models.
So in your club, when you're playing, how is the mix between boys and girls and Kazakhs and people from other cultures?
About culture, I can say that Kazakhstan is a very multicultural region, so I can't say something about it, but 70% is a man and 30 is woman. It's not too popular for women.
And so in your club, there would be like ethnic Kazakhs, ethnic Russians, etc.
Yes, Russian, Kazakhs, Tatar, so very multicultural region, so I can say someone is bigger, someone is smaller, so we're very open for every culture.
Do you have contacts to the other Central Asian countries, to the gaming clubs there, like in Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan?
We don't currently have strong contacts with other people from Central Asian countries. However, we are always open to new connections and would be happy to build friendship and collaborations.
So you talked a lot about how you're hoping to develop the scene in Kazakhstan. Where do you see role-playing games in 5 or 10 years? Because from my view, Kazakhstan only recently started playing Dungeons and Dragons and games in like the 2000s at the earliest, and it is growing so quickly. What do you think will happen in like 5 or 10 years?
I think in 5 or 10 years there will not be some big changes, but in 20-25 years, I think there will be fully virtual spaces with virtual helmets or capsules and the worlds that Game Master will create in virtual space, and another players can look at it and play with this in virtual space. So video games, but not video games. AI and Game Master's imagination plus new technologies. In 20 years, I think we will see absolutely another game experience. But in 5-10 years, I don't expect that something will change. The games is 50 years old and it's not changed at all, I think. Same game like in 50 years ago at the core. We're trying to develop tabletop RPGs in our region, and we will try to expand this to another countries, another regions, and we wish to other people do the same. Rise this hobby in your region. We did this and you can do this.
And finally, from the gamer who created the actual play recording we had in the teaser.
We'll try something new, and that is that our interviewee gave us written answers in English, and Matt will read his answers in his stead. So pardon the American dialect here. So who is he and how did he get into role-playing games?
So his name is Anwar Almasuli, or Anwar, son of Almas. He is the author of Kazakhstan D&D project, which aims to build a Kazakh language RPG community. And he is also an amateur translator dedicated to translating tabletop role-playing games into the Kazakh language. He first encountered the concept of fantasy RPGs in preschool when he played World of Warcraft 3. And he would play this in the yard with other kids. He would pretend to be a Death Knight or Demon Hunter, invent stories, and try to bring them to life within the World of Warcraft 3 map editor. It tells me that the results were clumsy and cringe, but it was a lot of fun. In middle school, he got back into D&D, watching videos about the Fallout game series on the Stop Game YouTube channel, and they talked about how role-playing games and tabletop RPG genres emerged. Before that, he'd only really heard about D&D in passing. He knew it was a geeky show, hobby from American shows, and it was something strange, mysterious, and oddly fascinating, and something that he definitely wanted to learn about, but later. That later finally came, once again, during the Fallout history video. He turned it around for about the 5th minute of an hour-long essay and immediately started searching YouTube for something about D&D. He stumbled onto the YouTube channel Living Room Studio and found himself in a strange but pleasant surprise. Imagine people sitting in a room with cardboard walls made up to look like dungeons. One man in armor crafted from painted linoleum with a scar painted across his face, a lady dressed like Indiana Jones, and one person who looks like a big Russian Harry Potter with chubby cheeks. Another man painted completely gray with orcish fangs and a chain around his neck. And finally, a French Monseigneur. And all of them were listening closely to a single storyteller. They had filmed an entire series of about 100 episodes, each 4 hours long. Since then, he was absolutely captivated. During his junior year in high school, he watched everything they had. He read the rule books in Russian to understand how D&D worked, and he spent times in VK, which is a Russian social media similar to Facebook community dedicated to the game. He kept reading, searching, and discovering the whole world of TTRPGs for himself. Unfortunately, Anwar lives in a small mining town with no regular tabletop game clubs, and amongst his friends and classmates, he couldn't find regular party members. He didn't at the time have the technical means to play online, so he really got started in university after moving to a larger city. On September 21st, 2022, in his second year, majoring in automation engineering, he found a post for Call of Cthulhu on Instagram. This was his first game and was set in the Lovecraft universe. The story was how about the characters woke up in a basement with none of them knowing how they got there. And this is when he met Elena Kondrativna, the game master who ran that session, and a person, an artist whom he respects for her efforts to support and promote Kazakh culture and language. About a month later, closer to Halloween, Elena opened her own creative workshop where people could play tabletop role-playing games. And that's when he started running D&D and similar games, and he still does to this day. And he never quite got to finishing that Fallout video. Half a year after his first Call of Cthulhu game, that's when he decided to start running games for himself. It was the middle of the night between July 27th and 28th, 2023. His thoughts were racing and wouldn't rest. Whenever he played D&D, no one quite understood his Kazakh idioms or proverbs. No one quite got the references, memes, or images. In Russian language D&D games, which was the primary way that people would play, he's practically mute as it's his second language. He felt that he needed players who spoke the Kazakh language. But where could he find them? RPG and geek culture mostly exists in Russian in Kazakhstan, which makes it harder for Kazakh-speaking people to integrate themselves into that community. The rules of D&D and the entire RPG terminal haven't been translated to Kazakh at all, which makes it challenging to attract a Kazakh-speaking audience. At that time, books like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings were just starting to be translated into Kazakh. In other words, this was uncharted territory. There was no RPG content in Kazakh, and no Kazakh-speaking community at all. Then a crazy thought struck Anwar. Well, I'll just do it myself. He needed this, and it didn't look like anyone else was going to do it. He took his first steps that very night, July 27th, 2023, and posted a message in the Kavardak Telegram group, the game club he was speaking about before, looking for players. Amusingly, the first two people who replied didn't speak Kazakh. They were Yelena Kanom and a man named Alexander. They joined in to support the idea and learned Kazakh, and for that he is endlessly grateful. The first session, however, unfortunately, didn't go too well. Turns out if your Kazakh language is worse than a preschooler's, you probably won't understand a dungeon master speaking in Kazakh either then. So yes, he started translating D&D into Kazakh because there's no one else to do it, and he needed it for himself. The country of Kazakhstan has only 34 years of independence, and the Kazakh language is slowly transforming from a village language into the language of an entire nation. And Anwar is glad to be able to help expand its horizons and to popularize the language. Because of his project, he got to meet wonderful people. For example, the translator Maksat Arasmas, who brought Shapowski's The Witcher into Kazakh language. He was also the official Dungeons & Dragons game master at Comic-Con Astana 2024 in Kazakhstan, together with another Kazakhstani tabletop club called Kosti, or Dice.
Okay, and by the way, Kosti would probably be Russian because that sounds...
Yes, it means bones in Russian.
Yeah, because I remember from the Ukraine episode, one of the actual plays has like a name which has a word game on that. Okay, and then the next question we posed him was, how did he do the translation? What were the challenges in translating magic or monster terms into Kazakh?
So Anwar is actively working on translating Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and Dungeons & Dragons 2024, along with all the supplementary materials. It's the most well-known system, and there's a lot of material for it that's easy to find. He believes that we can attract people who've played Baldur's Gate 3, watched Stranger Things, or even the Gravity Falls episode, Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons. We can also reach people who've seen Chicken Curry, which is a Russian show where comedians play a simplified TTRPG similar to D&D. He's also translated One Sheet Rules by Bill King and Knave 2E by Questing Beast. These games are great for one-shots with beginners, few rules, and lots of freedoms. As for the translations themselves, Anwar decided to adapt and reinterpret characters and concepts from Kazakh folklore. Sometimes he comes up with neologisms himself, and sometimes together with the players. For terms without direct equivalents, we chose similar concepts or adjust the original term to fit the phonetic patterns of the Kazakh language. The main goal was to create the feeling that the story truly takes place in a society that, at least conditionally, speaks a kind of medieval Kazakh to evoke that atmosphere in the player's mind and achieve the most complete localizations possible. For example, when he was translating the Ranger class, he chose the term Kezbe, which means wanderer, strider. He chose it as a tribute to Aragorn, and also because there isn't really a perfect equivalent for Ranger in the Kazakh language, while Kezbe, wanderer, strider, captures the spirit of the class quite well. He translated the astral plane as Gaib or Al-Gaib, the unseen world from Islamic tradition. He decided to translate potions as Ishirtki. In fact, there isn't really a direct equivalent for the concept of potion in Kazakh. He borrowed this translation from the 2020 Kazakh translation of Harry Potter. Originally, Ishirtki in old usage means water over which a surah from the Quran has been recited, a kind of blessed or enchanted water. In Kazakh mythology, there are beings capable of changing their form, but there's no single word to describe them. That is why he created the word khubulman, derived from the verb khubul, to change, to transform. The suffix man here is not the English man, as in Superman, but ending used to form nouns meaning one characterized by or one inclined to. He had to come up with the names of some of the schools of magic himself. For example, the school of necromancy, or the school of death, and a necromancer, Ajakelsh, death wielder, school of evocation, the school of magic power, and an evoker, Kushbagushu, power keeper. I translated celestials as Kuk Kierleri, spirits of the sky. In Kazakh legends, sacred or mystical beasts are often called Kok, meaning sky or heavenly, also blue. For example, there is Kok Wolf, the mother of Ashuna, the Kok bull, on whose horns the world stands, and the Kok catfish, whom the prophet Suleiman once tried to feed. For translating dwarves, we already have a figure in Kazakh folklore, the Erjeli, a kind of dwarf or little man. In the tales, they are described with the phrase, a body 1 span tall, but a beard 40 spans long. There's even a legend about 3 brothers who once left their meat boiling in a cauldron when they went about their business. When the eldest brother returned home, he found an Ergejeli sitting by the fire. It had eaten all the meat and then beat the poor man before running off. The same happened to the middle brother, but the youngest one managed to fight the creatures off and tied its long beard to a tree. For translating giants, he uses two different words, alp and dal. Alp is of Turkic origin. It refers to giants, strong or enormous people, and in ancient times it was even used as a title for heroic warriors. Dal, on the other hand, comes from the Turkic word dev. In folklore, Dal are evil, solitary giants who possess magical powers. In shamanistic practices, they can also appear as invisible spirit helpers. For translating fae or fairies, I use the word peri, which comes from the Persian language. The words fairy and peri actually share the same linguistic root, so it felt natural to use it. In D&D, however, peri are categorized as a type of angel, which he found rather strange because in traditional mythology, peri are closer to jinn, otherworldly ethereal beings who are alternate humans who dwell in desolate or hidden places. He chose to translate Kuatoa as ubi. The ubi refers to a mysterious water spirit or creature that lives in the lakes, rivers, and sometimes drags people underwater. He translated vampires ober. In Kazakh language, ober most often means a glutton or someone who eats excessively. But in folk legends, it also refers to an evil spirit that frightens people. According to the mythologist Serikbol Kondibe, the Kazakh word ober and the word vampire share the same linguistic roots. And that's why he thought it would make sense to translate vampires ober in Kazakh.
And he also includes a map here to show how this word is spread throughout parts of Eastern Europe and Western Asia.
For example, in different languages, this creature has similar names. In Russian and Ukrainian, yupur. In Chuvash, vupar. In Mari, vovor. In Udmurt, uber. In Bashkir and Kazan Tatar, uvor. In Karachay, Gagaz, and Crimean Tatar, ober. And in Hungarian, vampir. One of the biggest challenges in translation is that he's an amateur translator learning purely through practice. It doesn't help that he's taken on a field in which nobody has been translating content into Kazakh language before. Many of these terms and concepts have to be invented from scratch. Sometimes it's hard to express the game rules clearly and without falling into a grammatical issue, which are, in his opinion, the worst thing that can happen in translation. You might have all the words in Kazakh, but the sentence structure still follows the logic of another language. So if someone doesn't know the meaning of the original language, reads it, they can barely understand what you mean because you are unconsciously thinking in the grammar of the source, or worse in his case, the grammar of the Russian language. Russian, for context, the word order can be arranged in essentially any order that you please.
Yes, and as someone who has learned Turkish for a couple of years, it was really interesting for me to see that many of these creature names are often the same in Turkish because when they were from Persian, like peri is also Turkish for fairy, or dev, like Dao, is giant, but can also be used for just like something big or like a huge person. But like I would say like more than half of these supernatural terms would be the same in Turkish. But yeah, they're from the same language family and have lots of influences from Persian language too, I would guess.
Absolutely, and I recognize many of these terms from my readings of the Kirghiz Epic of Manas, which was an exciting crossover for me.
So the next question we posed is, how do you incorporate Kazakh culture in your games?
So in Enohar's games, he uses his own original setting. Its foundation is a medieval nomadic khanate, essentially a kingdom ruled by a khan. On top of that, he incorporated elements from the various historical periods, from the ancient eras of the Scythians and Huns all the way up to the 19th century. In his setting, there are the neutral lands, vast steppes inhabited by independent cities and scattered nomadic tribes. Then there are the steppes under the rule of the expanding Mangi El Empire. It is ruled by Chong Ata Kagan, the Eternal El, and his descendants, prince and princess generals. His bloodline consists of beings blessed by the sky, long-lived with skin of bluish hue. The inspiration comes from the Mongol and Gokturk empires. Chong Ata himself is a blend of the Ashina ancestors and Genghis Khan. The world features several great realms and peoples, the lands of dwarves, gnomes, and humans resembling the peoples of the Caucasus, like Georgians or Dagestanis, Elens, and Slavic peoples. The kingdoms of elves and humans, inspired by the settled Turkic peoples of the Mawaranar or the Sarts, as well as the Persians and Arabs, refined cultures where poetry, knowledge, and magic intertwine. The realm of dragonborn and humans, reminiscent of ancient China, the complex hierarchy, dragon cults, and timeless wisdom. And finally, the northern lands, akin to Siberia and its native peoples, harsh but free, bound by reverence for nature's spirits and ancient totems. In his setting, Goliaths play a similar role to tieflings or Aasimar. They are born among humans whose ancestors once loved or were blessed by mighty giants. Their blood carries the essence of those ancient beings, granting them great strength and endurance. Some rise to become legendary heroes, and their names are honored in the title Alp, meaning great or giant. Thus, figures such as Alp Manas, the Kyrgyz hero Manas, and Alp Ertoda, an ancient Turkic champion, enter these legends. For example, in this setting, the cleric's faith is based on the pantheon of Tengrism and the spiritual connection with ancestors. As for monks, he translated them as dervishes and modeled them after the imagery of Sufi orders. A Sufi is a specific, somewhat mystical order of Islamic monks or priests. For those unfamiliar, before Islam and Buddhism reached the nomads of Central Asia, their belief system was called Tengrism. Contrary to what some might think, it wasn't an organized religion in the usual sense, rather a vast collection of ancient traditions and shamanic practices spread across the nomadic lands of Eurasia.
I think the term shaman is actually from that region of the world and then came via Russia to other countries.
So the term shaman comes from a very specific group of northern Siberian indigenous peoples, but it's used widely in Central Asia to describe traditions of Tengrism, even when the term shaman would not have been used at that time. Sufism is, in a way, the monastic order of Islam, an order of mystics. After Uzbek Khan, a descendant of Genghis Khan and the ruler of the Golden Horde, declared Islam the state religion, the Kazakh steppe became a home to numerous legends about saints and Sufi masters. Orders such as Yasawiya and Nashbandiya held great political and spiritual influence. That is why in his setting, he freely blends Central Asia's folk Islamic traditions with its ancient pre-Islamic beliefs. He also lists a few examples of the pantheon of Tengrism, which can serve as patrons for clerics or warlocks. Kok Tengri, the god embodying the sky, creator of all things. Mai Ana, Mother Umai, the feminine aspect of Tengri, goddess of womanhood, childbirth, and fertility. Unlike the agricultural ideas of a fertility goddess as a personification of the earth, she represents fertility in the worldview of pastoral peoples. Adru Jersu, sacred earth and water, the divine embodiment of native land, lord of all waters and soil, representing all local spirits of earth and water as one. Ot Ana, mother fire, she is the protector of the hearth, home, children, and healing. In Anwar setting, she is the most venerated deity amongst the common folk, though she can rival Mai Ana in reverence. She acts as an intermediate between humans, spirits, and gods. Erlik, the god of the underworld, ruler of the realms of the dead. Anwar believed it was worth mentioning that Mai Ana and Otana have survived in Kazakh traditions to this day. Kazakh women sometimes recite ritual chants involving them, such as "Do not frighten the newborns, Mother Mai, embrace them and bless them," or "It is not my hand, but the hand of Mother Mai when people do something. It is believed that a guardian spirit always helps them." The image of Umai later merged with that of Bibi Fatima, daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The ritual Oktamai Kuyu, pouring butter into the fire, is still practiced today during important family events, such as when a bride enters her new home, when a mother gives birth, or when she is moving into a new home. Related to this, Shokan Volankhanov, an ethnographer of the region, wrote in his article, "Fire is considered sacred. It is forbidden to spit into it or step over the hearth. When a new bride enters her husband's home, she greets the spirits with a bow and says, 'May the ancestors be pleased,' then pours butter into this fire and bows several times, praying, 'Ot Ana, Mai Ana, bless us.' During this, her mother-in-law, or another woman, warms her palms over the flame and strokes the bride's face. In honor of the fire of the main yurt, the father-in-law covers the bride's shoulders with the cloak and gives his blessing. 'May your temper be as soft as well-tanned leather, my dear,' seating her on a sheepskin. To swear an oath, 2 fires were lit, and the person had to pass between them and kiss the barrel of the gun that had killed. Fires believed to have purifying power. People or belongs a passing between fires for the cleansing of a ritual called Alastau. Even today, when moving from winter pastures, caravans passes between 2 flames, burning sacred herbs like juniper or wormwood. Fires believed to drive away evil spirits, protect from curses, and cleanse people and homes.
And then Anwar gives very detailed descriptions of some magical rituals, but they're mostly in Kazakh, so we let him give us some examples.
Бірден бірге шабар тілі, шапты қарлық тілі, қамшы батыс тілі, мама туған тілі, тоқтамалық тілі, бес ағаш тілі, алма құдық тілі, қу талқы тілі, дөрген өгіз тілі, өрме қайыс тілі, қара желім тілі, жеті құлаш тілі, қу томат, балпан, кім баспас, сары тонның жамылған, ей зияндасы, мен де келдім, сен де қаш.
So, once again, to quote Enwa, Central Asia is a unique and still a largely unexplored region for the world. Think about it. What do you know about the history and legends of Central Asia, especially its microhistory, the history of everyday life? In fact, this region has an immensely rich past, shaped by the convergence of at least three great cultures, Turkic, Persian, and Mongol. Here, vast open steppes coexist with forested mountains, ancient cities, and stand alongside the nomadic civilization. In a Central Asian setting, the story may unfold within the nomadic civilization, a culture rooted in movement and impermanence, living in harmony with nature. Here, roads, journeys, the changing seasons, and the spirit of the steppe matter more than cities or fortresses. The nomadic world follows its own laws and hierarchies. The Khan and the Bi, or the judge, the Batur, warrior, and the Shirao, or the bard, the shaman, and the sage. Each plays a role in maintaining the balance of the universe. Such a setting offers players a truly unique experience. Here, the core values are freedom and the struggle for survival, and the danger that may come not only from enemies, but from nature itself. The steppe is both mother and trial. One day it grants food and shelter, the next it may swallow you whole. In a nomadic RPG campaign, events can revolve around intertribal relations, sacred lands and ancestors, and the will of the spirits of the steppe. Every expedition and migration is not just a geographic journey, it is a spiritual trial. Characters struggle not only against enemies, but also with themselves and with the weight of tradition. In such a world, political intrigue, ancient prophecies, lost totems, or the pursuit of a sacred beast all find a natural place in the story. Travel lies at the very heart of Central Asian mythology and history. Here, the road is not merely a direction. It is the thread that connects a person to their destiny and spirit. Whether it is the caravans of the Silk Road or the campaigns of nomadic tribes, the journey is always more than movement. That's why, in Enwar's games, the image of the road becomes a storytelling device in and of itself, a way to reflect both the flow of the narrative and the inner growth of the characters. For instance, every place where a caravan stops has its own story and guardian. In one village, the whispers of spirits can be heard at night. In another, an ancient city like Samarkand rises under the sun. In a third, an old bard who speaks with the wind awaits for the players.
Quick comment here. The city of Samarkand is in modern-day Uzbekistan. Just that if you're looking that up, that you're not confused. But it's a very famous city for the Silk Road and for schools and learning and religion in the Middle Ages.
And sometimes, the stillness of the open steppe, the silence beneath the vast sky, gives players space to reflect on their characters and their journeys. Throughout their travels, players move not only through the world, but also along a spiritual path. From one expedition to the next, they uncover the myths, customs, and beliefs of their people, deepen their connection to the world, and understand the world in which they live. Within Central Asian mythology, there are countless wonderful beings and terrifying creatures. One legend tells of a hunter who once found himself alone in the vast steppe, forced to spend the night in a desolate place. As dusk fell, he lit a fire and began to cook meat, when he noticed a shadow approaching from afar. As he drew near, he saw that it was a woman. The stranger came silently and sat down beside the fire. Though suspicion flickered in the hunter's heart, the law of the steppe demanded that a guest be treated with respect. Is she a wild wanderer or simply lost, he wondered, offering her a piece of meat. She accepted without a word, yet her eyes glimmered strangely. In the pale light of the moon, they shone not with warmth, but with the cold gleam of a predator. After a while, the woman rose and vanished soundlessly into the dark. Unease gnawed at the hunter. Acting on instinct, he placed a log by the fire, covered it with his coat to resemble a sleeping man, and climbed a nearby tree with his rifle. Around midnight, as the wind began to stir and embers dimmed, the woman returned. But now her form was no longer human. Her eyes burned red, her nails gleamed like copper, and her hair steamed wildly as she moved with inhuman grace. With a shriek, she lunged towards the sleeping hunter and drove her claws into the log. And at that very moment, a gunshot thundered from above. Silence fell over the steppe. When dawn broke, the hunter descended, and by the fire laid out a woman, with the corpse of a Zitanach, a demoness with long copper claws, beautiful and deadly.
So thanks, Matthew, for reading that part that Anwar sent us. And I'm really grateful for Anwar that he was able to give us this text, to give us this very rich background on Kazakh culture and how he incorporates that into games. I'm really glad that we could include that in the episode.
So thank you for listening to episode 26 of The World of RPGs. The intro music was Battle of the Dragons by Thomas Mutsiu, and the logo is by Ayber Karakash. A special thanks goes out to all my interviewees and informants from Kazakhstan that helped bring this together, and to Matt for helping me get in touch with everyone and co-hosting this episode. As always, you can find relevant links in the show notes. The actual play was recorded for us by Anwar, so that was exclusive to the teaser. Please follow and like this podcast on your player of choice or the social media you follow. As for the next episode, I made it a bit complicated for me because I will travel to a multilingual country soon. And so first I wanted to cover the neighboring countries where those languages are majority languages. And we start with the one that is a bit confusing for me because I can almost understand it.
Maar het is een bard met geesten. Maar jij doet geen geesten, Sherry.
Nee, maar hij is dus van een andere school.
Maar als hij wel naar school is geweest, hè, dan kan hij toch ook in principe muziek spelen?
Dat deed hij ook de eerste avond.
Maar even kijken, hoeveel mensen gaan er ook weer naar zo'n seance? 10 of zo?
Er zaten met 7 mensen in de kamer.
7. Dat is 7 gold, hè?
Mm-hmm.
Elke 2-3 dagen. Dat is veel.
Dan heeft hij vast genoeg geld.
Ja. Dat is meer dan een soldaat verdient. Dat is meer dan dat een arme ridder als inkomsten heeft.
Waarom denk je dat ik met een bard wilde werken?
Ja, ik vind hem helemaal niet zielig. Maar
Waarom?
veel meer korting kunnen geven, heeft geld genoeg.
En de mensen hier hebben volgens mij niet veel geld. Het is eigenlijk best wel zielig dat zij zoveel geld moeten betalen.
Weet je wat het ook is? Je hebt niet zo heel veel aan geld hier. Tuurlijk, je kan de eten en zo meer kopen, maar zelfs dat is schaars.
Hebben ze dan niet meer aan iemand die zeg maar zijn waardevolle tijd spendeert aan bij wijze van eten toveren?
Ja, daarom dat die pot van ons zo kostbaar was. Maar ja, die zijn wij dus kwijt. Die is gestolen.
Ja, dus die zijn wij verloren. Kwijtgeraakt.
Ja, en daar hadden we zoveel aan kunnen verdienen. En dat hebben we nou niet gedaan.
Ik kan ook smakeloos eten voor 10 mensen tevoorschijn denken.
Is dat hetzelfde als wat...
Nou, het smaakt nergens naar.
Maar wilt het wel?
Ja.
Ik denk niet dat
Ik heb eventueel kruiden, dan maken we het smaakvol. En ik heb natuurlijk ook gewoon dit en ze cast good berries en er zitten 10 besjes in de hand.
Ja, is dat niet hetzelfde?
Ja.
Ja, maar dit is 1 bes. En dat voor mij
Dit zijn
is wel
er 10.
echt gewoon...
Dit is een dag, dit zijn 10 mensen voedsel voor een
Kunnen
dag.
we daar geen soep van maken?
Vast. Ik zou er een sap van maken als ik jou was, maar...
Oranje.
Ja.
Kunnen we een smoothie van
Geef
maken?
10 bessen aan 6, alsjeblieft.
Vitamine shotje. Ja, ik iets om het in te stampen. Wacht even.
Gewoon je ginger shot.
Ik ga kijken of ik er oranje van kan maken.